building a system that is robust with respect to the possibility of institutions failing strikes me as being a better system, strikes me as being a necessary component of a strategy, because the critique you just offered that the crisis will always come in a different place seems to me to apply with rather more force to try to find particular institutions to regulate more heavily and try to stop them from doing whatever it was they did that caused the last crisis. I mean, let's be clear. There were some lessons we learned from the last crisis. We learned the lesson.
That's right. Which was the last
crisis? From the SNL crisis period. You know, we learned the lesson that for an individual institution to borrow short and lend long for mortgages was going to be massively unstable, and that's what kind of led us to securitization. And that was a good idea, but now we've got some problems with securitization. So I think there is a kind of dynamic where you fight the last war, you learn lessons, you adjust. Sometimes you over-adjust, and we find our way. But I guess the broad point I want to emphasize here is that, and I do think there's a pretty, well, some have certainly recognized it, Sheila has, I think there's a very general problem in the regulatory community that they focus on the health of individual institutions. They become identified with the institutions and worry about their problems rather than worrying about the issue I already mentioned, which is the safety for which is the making the system fail safe, and the different issue of procyclicality. Look, when an individual institution's in trouble, it's good for it to shrink its balance sheet. When everybody tries to shrink their balance sheet at once, it's a catastrophe. If I stand up at a football game, I can see better. If everybody stands up, everybody's less comfortable and nobody can see better. And you have to take a systemic view of it. And while increasingly in the last months lip service is being paid to that concept, the reality of our structure of financial regulation is that it hasn't really embraced that concept of systemic stability as the dominant paradigm that it employs.